The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. This month's programming is sponsored by Signature Theater, presenting the DC premiere of the untitled, unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson musical. Follow the godfather of gonzo journalism as he barrels through American history in this critically acclaimed new rock musical now through July 13th. Buy tickets now at sigtheater.org. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Rounding out June entertainment includes Ryan Adams on June 28th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The classic rock band Orleans performs at Rams Head in Annapolis, Maryland this Saturday, June 28th. I spoke to longtime bass player Lance Hoppen about the band's journey to record timeless hits like Dance With Me and Still the One. Hey, Lance Hoppen, hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Good to be here, Jason.
We are talking to the longtime bass player for the cool band Orleans. Everybody loves them. They're coming to Rams Head in Annapolis, Maryland on Saturday, June 28th. Now, do the Orleans fans come out strong in Maryland? I know your former vocalist John Hall grew up nearby in Baltimore, was even down in D.C. as a U.S. congressman from 07 to 11. So my point is, I imagine there's plenty of Orleans fans still in this area from John, but also just because of all your great music, right?
Well, we sure hope so. Otherwise, nobody comes to the gig. But we are going strong here in year 53. John Hall was the reason there is Orleans in the first place. And he did co-write Dance With Me and Still the One and the majority of our catalog. But the actual lead singer that you hear on those records is not John. It's Larry, my older brother, who had that tenor voice and the magical combination of John's writing and guitar playing and Larry's voice and instrumental skills were key to the success of the band. John himself retired from the road in the spring of 22, leaving me to be the last of the original four, still touring as Orleans. And I've got this pretty awesome quintet that we have here, carrying on the musical legacy, and fans seem to really, really enjoy it.
These Rams Head kind of venues are intimate, you know, people are having dinner and right up by the stage, which is why I think it's cool. Do you find when you look out at the audience, is it folks that sort of were your fans back in the 70s and now they're bringing their kids or hell, even their grandkids at this point, like a multi-generational crowd?
Yeah, you got that right. It's mostly the boomers, mostly our generation, and there's a certain amount of nostalgia effect in play, but we also see their kids and occasionally their grandkids who are discovering the band, and we appreciate the intergenerational nature of it and the fact that the music seems to be timeless. A lot of people like it across the generations.
It is timeless. I feel like good music is good music, man, and Orleans especially. That sounds immortal. Well, great. So, I would love to sort of hear your journey. I know you were born in Long Island, New York. Paint a picture of your childhood. I think it was four of you, right? It was you and your older brother Larry, who would of course go on to form the band later. But even back as kids growing up, what did your parents do for a living? They were musicians, right?
They were. They met on a gig post World War II. My mother was a very, very gifted singer and piano player. My dad was a very capable horn player. And they married, and he had to, he became a businessman, support a family. And she actually played gigs until she was about 40 and taught piano until she was about 60. But we grew up in a house full of music, all of us. There were four of us, my older sister, my older brother Larry, my younger brother Lane. And the three boys went on to be professional. And actually all three of us were in the band for quite a few years. Orleans started while I was still in high school. Larry had already been in a couple of bands up in Ithaca, New York, and
he went there for college. He went to Ithaca, right?
Yeah, that's right, and that's where he met Wells Kelly. And Wells Kelly knew John Hall, and John called Wells, and then Wells called Larry, and that convened the trio that became Orleans in the early '72. And by the fall, I had graduated high school, and then they recruited me to be the fourth guy, and then we started recording the following summer. So
Yeah. And not only had your brother, he had done, what was it called? Bafalango. His band had done like two albums with United Artists, but the other members were doing big things before Orleans as well. Like drummer Wells Kelly was in King Harvest. Everyone loves that song, Dancing in the Moonlight. And John Hall, I guess he and his then wife wrote Half Moon for Janis Joplin's posthumous album, Pearl, the Iconica. So they were all doing cool stuff before they all combined forces and birthed Orleans in Woodstock, New York in 72. So you're still back in high school, probably missing Big Bro as he goes off to college. But did you have any good memories of listening to his early work or King Harvest or John Hall's writing for Joplin? Like any memories of the pre-Orleans phase through your eyes as a high schooler?
sure, I was always in awe of my brother's abilities. It was very intimidating, actually. He could he played by ear. He was trained. Nobody knew he had that voice until he came home from college the first time. He had a couple of local bands that I never heard, and then we went off early. He went off to college at 16, um, and that's when I picked up a guitar for the first time because he was out of the house and I didn't have to be in his presence. And I started plunking on the low E string and figured out from there how to be a bass player. Um, but my aspiration was always to not for fame or fortune, but to be a working musician. That's what I wanted to do, and I would hopefully wanted to do it with him. And lo and behold, by the time I was 18, that took shape.
Well, other than Big Bros music, what other bands at the time, I guess we're talking like in the 60s at this point. What other bands really inspired you growing up? I mean, everyone always cites the Beatles and we just lost Brian Wilson as well. I'm sure Beach Boys were also huge for you.
Yeah, of course, Beatles were like primary for me. I saw them on Ed Sullivan when I was 9, and it was a huge
Yeah.
event, and it changed lives. But yeah, the Beach Boys, the Byrds were a big deal, which became Crosby, Stills and Nash, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Later, things like Chicago were influential. But my brother brought a lot of music into the house. Traffic, um, Rod Stewart and Jeff Beck. It was a big album they did together. A lot of things that crossed my path because of his influence.
Wow, that's great. All right, well then let's go into sort of now the official Orleans phase. They formed, like we said, in Woodstock, New York in 72, and you joined, I guess, later that year. I guess you were 18, fresh out of high
That's right.
school.
Right.
How did they, or even if it was right before you, how did you all settle on the name? Because it's Long Island, New York, and Ithaca, New York, and Woodstock, New York. How do you pick Orleans? Is it just inspired by a New Orleans artist, that sound, or why'd you settle on that?
That's the story they told. I mean,
What's the real story?
no, I think that's probably true. It's three guys who can't agree on a name of a band,
Yeah.
kicking around a lot of names until they stumbled on that. And they were playing a lot of cover music as well as their original stuff as they started out. And Wells said Orleans, and nobody objected. And then there you go. So it was intended to be temporary, but once you get branded at all, you can't really change that.
Well, it's a catchy name, so I think it worked out all right. And of course, so before they get signed, I read that Rolling Stone magazine called them the best unrecorded band in America around that time. So they were in demand. Eventually signed with ABC Dunhill Records to record that self-titled debut album, New Orleans, in '73. Wasn't that recorded down at the famous Muscle Shoals in Alabama?
That's right. We were brought to ABC's attention by Cashman and West, who were Jim Croce's producers, but we didn't want them to make our record. And we wound up, thankfully, with Roger Hawkins and Barry Beckett from the famed Muscle Shoals Sound Studio.
We know they got the Swampers down
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And that was really cool. We did the album in 15 days on 15 tracks because track one didn't work. And they wanted to do it in 1 week, but we said, please, two. And that's breakneck speed for these days.
Seriously, seriously. But after that first album, the second one, I think, is really when you all blew up at Orleans 2, 1974. That was not down at Muscle Shoals. That was back up where we're talking, Bearsville Studios in the Woodstock, New York area. And of course, everyone knows the breakthrough, that smash hit Dance With Me. I think it made it all the way up to like number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. Who wrote that? Was that a John one, or was that John? That was John and his then wife as well. I said they wrote the Janis Joplin song, but they also co-wrote that, right?
That's right. They wrote, Johanna was a writer for the Village Voice and got an interview with Janice, and John went along with it. And she said, "You guys should write a song together." And the first song they did write together was Half Moon. It became not only on a Pearl album, it was the flip side, it was the B side of Me and Bobby McGee. So
Wow.
the royalties from that,
May have heard of it.
yeah, the mechanical royalties from the sale of that record bought them their house in Woodstock,
So
which is
that
one of
helps
the,
sort of fund his whole journey there, if you think about it. Yeah.
that's right. So that's how they got started.
But as for Dance With Me, though, everyone knows that. Dance With Me. I
Right.
always thought that when ABBA did Dancing Queen, that kind of, I think they were ripping you off. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a harmonic similarity,
Yeah.
and Dancing with Me was first actually, but
Of course. Of
you
course.
can't copyright that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, John walked into the garage we were rehearsing in at that time with that acoustic guitar lick to Dance with Me, and Larry said, "That's a good one. You should finish that." And John handed it to Johanna for their lyric, and that's what she came up with. And there you go. Now you mentioned the album Orleans 2. We did for ABC. It was our second album up in Bearsville. We self-produced, and ABC hated it. They didn't hear any hits. They dropped us from the label.
Really?
Yeah, and we went back to New York City to showcase again. And luckily, we were spotted by Chuck Plotkin, who is the head of A&R, Artist and Repertoire at Asylum Records. And he not only wanted the band, he wanted the two songs he heard, "Let There Be Music" and "Dance with Me," which were both on that second album that
Yeah.
ABC dropped. And so he bought the re-recording rights, and we recut those songs. And "Let There Be Music" was the title cut of the first Asylum album, which was our third album.
Yeah. In
And
75.
our first single, it went top 50 something. So radio got wind, and then Dance with Me, came through the door next.
Thanks for explaining that because I was gonna ask. Well, that's where I was going next. Is why was Dance with Me and re-recorded or re-released on Let There Be Music, the third album in '75? But you just explained it. Thank you. It's sort of they needed the rights. It's like Taylor Swift, Taylor's version or whatever, or the
Yeah,
New
so
Orleans version.
yeah, and it was the difference in production and the difference in promotion
Yeah.
is what those made those records work.
Gotcha. So it was a label switch, is why. Okay, cool. Good to know. All right, and then of course, then we have to hit the fourth album, Waking and Dreaming '76. That has your all's most iconic hit. Still the one. I think that even cracked the top five of the Hot 100. Also, probably the song you're probably the most tired of talking. Probably asked all the time, but my listeners will kill me if we don't at least get one question in on it. So yeah, I just think the message is timeless. People want to hear about celebrating a couple that's still in love after all these years. We all aspire to be still having fun, and you're still the one. Is that why you think it works?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Johanna had a friend ask her because she said that, "Oh, everybody's writing all these breakup songs. Can't anybody write a stay together song?"
Yeah.
So she wrote. The legend is she wrote that lyric on like a envelope and handed it to John, and within 15 minutes he had all the chord changes, and that's how that song was birthed. And then it was just a song among songs that we were playing live a certain way. And when we got in the studio, Chuck Plotkin, our producer again, helped sculpt it into what became that hit record. And yeah, we didn't know that. We didn't know it would have such a life. It's one of the most licensed songs ever.
Oh,
Well,
I think I heard it in a commercial on TV the other day.
well, zillions. I mean, it was the ABC TV theme song for 2 years. It's been used in countless commercials for every kind of product and every kind of small to large campaign. It's been used in movies and TV and so on and so forth. So it's made its way into Americana, and that's been very good for us.
Oh, it's easily the one that if there are young kids coming out to Annapolis, kids or grandkids of your fans, that if they tag along, that is the one they're gonna know and they won't even know how they know it. It's just ubiquitous at this point in our
Exactly.
society.
That's right.
What'd you think of? Didn't Bill Anderson do a country cover too in '77? What'd you think of that one?
Whispering Bill. I've heard about it. I don't think I've ever heard it, but we appreciate the flattery. Anybody who cuts the song that you've cut that's a good thing.
Exposes it to a new audience, right?
Yeah, and I'm surprised it hasn't been covered more. I think a lot of bands play it live
Yeah.
in their sets, and Dance With Me's been covered quite a bit too. Earl Klug, Chet Atkins,
Nice.
Steve Wariner, Sawyer Brown. I mean, there's a lot of versions of that.
You're naming some of the coolest artists ever. I love it. And they all are paying homage by covering it. Great. And then of course in 77, John Hall leaves to go solo, but you all put together another hit, Love Takes Time, number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100. That's on your fifth album, Forever, in 79. So was it important for you all to prove you could keep it going after John's departure, or you're not really thinking about that?
Oh no, that was absolutely mission critical. I mean,
Yeah.
so there were a lot of internal stresses at the time, and John felt it was time for him to leave.
Yeah.
In retrospect, we all agreed that was like the worst decision ever, because you can't. We just blew our momentum in a big way and
Yeah.
never really recaptured it. Now, Larry and Wells and I and continued and made a bunch of demos and shopped them around and got the deal, which led to Love Takes Time being a hit single. I think it hit number 11. But
Yeah.
so that it kind of was exonerating and affirming, So we were able to do a second coming, and then that ran its course. The '80s, as we turned into the '80s, things really went bad in the industry as well as personally, and for the band, it just was a tough time.
What do you mean by in the industry? I know the tragedy in the band we can get to in a minute, but like
A
what
couple, well, right around 80, 81, it was oil shortage. This one that like you had to get like you could only get gas every other day on your
Oh, you
license.
mean economically?
I
Oh,
mean,
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oil
Yeah,
was,
yeah, oh yeah.
yeah,
Like
right.
late
And then
Carter, early Reagan. Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
economy went down, and
Yep.
labels were slashing rosters and
Mm,
staff. The label we were on, Infinity, was a MCA subsidiary it was a startup basically, and
right.
they had us, they had Hot Chocolate, they had a few things, but they made a big mistake. Something about releasing the album of the Pope as he toured America, and that wasn't authorized, and so they were going to get sued to death. So they just folded.
What do you
And
mean? Like the Pope's speeches, an album or something? What do you
there
mean?
was some kind of Pope album that they weren't supposed to. Anyway,
All
they
right.
did. They spent themselves out of existence and disappeared. So that left us hanging,
Mm.
and we had to shop again. Actually, MCA wouldn't let us go, so we had to make another album for them. And unfortunately, that album did nothing. And that's when everything kind of set in.
Ah,
It was a lot of tension. And Wells left the band, and then and we just Larry and I just kept going best we could until the fall of '84. And then he and I said, you know what, this is too hard. I quit, and so we were done. And no sooner had we done that than Wells had his unfortunate rock and roll death.
he was
Well,
out with Meatloaf touring, right?
that's right. And
Yeah.
when we heard about that, so there's a memorial. I was unable to attend, but John and Larry got on stage together for the first time in 7 years,
Really? So that kind
and
of brought him back under sad circumstances, but it
that's
didn't.
right. And that they rediscovered their desire to do that, and they got me, and so we made more demos, and we had a stand. John had a standing offer from Tony Brown. He's a music mogul here in Nashville, big time producer and label head, and he said if Orleans reconvenes, you can make a record here on MCA.
Wow. Was that Grown Up Children in 86?
That's right.
Because
We
you'd
did
done
that.
Orleans in 80, One of a Kind in 82. Then, like, that's when you guys, like you're saying, you kind of called it quits. And then you reconvene after Wells's funeral.
That's right. And we went to Nashville, and it was an experiment in country crossover before it was really a thing.
Yeah.
There was Alabama, but there wasn't much.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't yet Restless Heart, which kind of aced it, where they crossed successfully both country music radio and pop radio. But so
I
we,
loved Restless Heart growing up. Well, and Alabama, of course. But what was there? When She Cries at
yeah,
Night?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we were trying to do that before we knew what we were trying to do.
Right.
So it was not country enough for country. It wasn't pop enough for pop. It did
Yeah.
nothing again. And again, we put the band away until 1990. We reconvened to do a specific project, a live album for Japan,
Oh.
and that turned into a double CD. Put it back
Analog
together.
Men is 94 and Ride is 96.
That's right. We did two tours of Japan, 91 and 94. We did Analog Men for the Japanese audience. It was a Japanese label deal.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was the precursor to Ride, which was the year later. And by the time we got to Ride, we had replaced almost all of the songs from Analog Men because we had newer and what we thought was better material. we reworked a couple of things and brought them forward. And but I'm a big fan of Ride. I think it's maybe our best work.
So that's like an underrated. If folks are coming to Rams Head in Annapolis and they know all the big, 70s hits and everything, but you're saying that Ride is a good, maybe underrated one that they should go back and try to familiarize them with themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
I really love that album.
Thank you. That's when I love talking to, rockers like you because you all have like suggestions that, if the average person was kind of going through your discography, they might skip over it. But when I hop on with you all, you're like, no, go back and check this out. Some of our secret best stuff, you know? I love it. All right, and then I guess you do what, two more with your older brother, Dancing in the Moonlight in 2005. That's a callback, right? King Harvest. And then Obscurities in 2008. What did you make of those final two you did with Larry? Do you look back on them fondly?
Yeah, so let me fill in a couple of blanks. I told you Infinity folded from
Yeah.
underneath us. One of
Yeah.
a Kind was on an indie label. They folded underneath us. They went out of business. And then uh, when we did Ride, it was on a label aptly named Dinosaur, and they quickly went extinct. So we've had that happen to us three times, so albums don't get heard.
Why would they
Um,
name it Dino? I guess it had just been after Jurassic Park.
was correctly named, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, after Ride, we had a couple nothing, nothing happened with that record. So we again broke up, and then we for a couple of years, and then we came back
Mhm.
and started playing again in 2000. And by 2005, we had not a lot of budget and not a lot of time. And we put together the Dance in the Moonlight album. See, you have to understand that Boffalongo, as you mentioned from Ithaca, Larry did the two albums for UA. He was the only guy who was still in the band by the end of the second album. The original quartet morphed and morphed and morphed.
Mhm.
And at the very end of the second album, they got Sherman Kelly in the band, and Sherman, the brother of Wells, wrote "Dance in the Moonlight." So
Right.
they cut the actual first version of that. It was not the hit version, but the first version.
Ah,
So
okay.
Buffalongo morphed again, and so it was Larry and Sherman and Wells and this guy Doc Robinson. And so when John called Wells to join a band, make a band, and he quit Buffalongo, that was the end of it. Then they got Larry. Now, in the meantime, Sherman Kelly, the writer of the song, and Doc Robinson, Buffalongo bass player, became the lead singer of King Harvest. So the
Mm.
breakup of Buffalongo birthed both Orleans and King
Okay.
Harvest.
Okay.
But before there was King Harvest record, Orleans was playing Dance in the Moonlight at every gig because they'd learned it in Buffalongo. So
Right.
it was a gimme, and
Lots of
we
crossover there. Yeah.
right. So we had to put it away when it was a top 40 hit, of course, but we resurrected it for our 2005 album, right? So that's how that all happened.
Ah, okay. So
Full,
it's
full,
on Dancing
full
in the
circle.
Moonlight, and you call the whole album after that, and it's sort of a
Yeah, full
callback
circle.
to like, yeah, well, we kind of put it away for years when King Harvest was
Yeah,
associated, but really it was sort of our band members
yeah.
originally. I
We didn't
got
have
you.
the hit, but we have a connection. Anyway,
Gotcha.
that's about that. And so that album is like half new stuff and half of the best of Ride and Analog Men brought forward because nobody had heard that stuff. So
Right.
that's where that was.
Right. It was only in Japan people had heard those. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that was that. And Obscurities is an album full of demos and alternate masters and things um, nobody would have heard otherwise. It's an interesting look into some depth of the stuff that
Yeah.
didn't make the final cut. Um, and then more recently, we have our double disc best of thing called "No More That You Can Handle," which is a song that was the last song I got to write with Larry. It
Mm.
was in 2010, and of course he passed in 2012, and it was tough times,
Mm.
a lot of tough times.
Yeah.
2010, 11, 12, all that time, and
Mm.
ironically, no more than you can handle is a song about persevering in the face of adversity. So when you think about that, and what when Larry passed, I had to make quick decisions, and what I wanted to do, what I did not want to do, was just suddenly disappear off the face of the earth. We had about 8 more gigs to do in 2012. And I just said, let's figure out how to finish the year. So John had been in Congress. and was itching to play. And so he came back to the band. And Bob Blindback and a couple other guys who had been in the band before helped us get through all those gigs. And when we got to November, I was done. I was like, okay, we've done 40 years. This must be the end. I'm okay with that. We'll see what's next. No sooner had I done that, I got a call from a guy I'd met earlier that year who who became our new manager. But he said, if you guys want to tour next year, I've got one for you. John and I talked about it, and that became what they called the Sail Rock Tour of 2013 because, of course, Yacht Rock was already taken. We were the house band for that show, and it was Christopher Cross and us. We did our own 5-song set, but we played for everybody. So Christopher, us, Firefall, Robbie Dupree, Player, Gary Wright, John Ford Coley.
That because Christopher had that song Sailing. I guess that just perfect.
He was the biggest.
The sail
He was
tour.
the biggest
Sailing.
draw, right? So he's the headliner.
Yeah.
On what was a 7 or 8. Al Stewart was on the band, about 7 or 8 bands. So everybody did 3 to 5 songs, and we played behind everybody. I was the musical director for the tour, and that put us back healing and moving on. So from there, 2013, here we are, 2025.
Yeah.
John's retired. I'm still going, and
You're the last remaining original member, I guess, right?
that's right. And so every version, and there have been many. There have been about 15 players come through us,
Sure.
15 players, singers, all of them contributing as they came and went. But this quintet has its own personality, but it's very much in keeping with the thread, the musical thread that is Orleans.
Absolutely. And folks, that's why this is such a treat to talk to Lance Hoppen because you have all the stories dating back to that original. Well, I guess you weren't technically in the original lineup, but you joined the same year and it's your older brother. So you're basically, I can say you're one of the last original.
Yeah, I used to visit Ithaca when Larry
Yeah.
was in college a couple times. So
Yeah.
I was there with Boffalongo. I saw the trio Orleans, I think twice
Yeah.
in that year, that formative year before I joined. And so, yeah, I've been there
You're an
since.
original member. It counts. All the big hits we know, you were there for all of them, all the albums. So.
I know where all the bodies are buried.
Oh man. Yeah, that's true. Thank you. You went into all the albums, but do you do anything off of New Star Shining? That came into that was one of like I guess your pandemic record 2021, right? So do you ever sprinkle anything at the live shows?
Well, in the season, in December shows or whatever,
Yeah.
yeah, we do a couple of those Christmassy holiday songs. Yeah, we did that during the lockdowns.
Oh, it's a Christmas album. I got you.
Yeah, New Star was a song that the Halls wrote in the '80s for Alabama, and they didn't cut it. Um, but James Taylor and Ricky Skaggs did. So
Yeah.
that was that. And then we did our own version in '95, I think '94. And then when we made this holiday album, it was the anchor piece. And we all worked remote, 5 different homes, recording and sending files back and forth to make an album. It was quite a learning experience.
Hey, you've been really generous, but I wanted to ask real quick before we go. You've name dropped Alabama a bunch. You mentioned CSNY earlier. Which of your contemporary bands, your peers at the time, or over the years, which ones do you think pushed you the most, that you admired the most? I've been thinking about this a lot lately. When Brian Wilson passed, they always talked about the Beach Boys and the Beatles sort of pushing each other. But who was it for you? Is it the Eagles? I don't know. Who was it?
Um, I'm going to say Little Feat.
Nice. We've had them on too. Yes, great band. Oh my God, underrated band.
Well, and yeah, not a hit record band. I mean, a lot of notable songs like Dixie Chicken and Willin' and big songs, but not like radio, like not top 40 kind of radio big
Right.
songs. But they were so cool, absolutely cool, and we got to tour with them because we had the same management, and so we had aspirations on the improvisational side to be more like that, not just the polished pop stuff. And some people saw us that way. So if you're talking about being pushed musically, yeah, that was a big deal. I really enjoyed touring with Jackson Brown, who was one of my favorites back in the day. That was kind of peak Orleans in the summer of '76.
Yeah. You know what? When I was going back listening to a lot of your stuff and prepping for this, even like the late 70s, early 80s, like Love Takes Time, maybe you can almost hear the Jackson Brown. Like you can hear the production that's that era. I can hear that.
Hmm.
I think he recorded, didn't he record the one with Running on Empty and the Loadout and all that? I believe it was around here in Merriweather. I believe. I believe.
I think it might have even been the tour we were on. I'm not really sure if it was that or the one after, but yeah. Um, yeah, a really an icon in his own right. Speaking of the Ram's Head, the last time we were there was 2015, and we were playing with Paul Barrere and Fred Taggart from Little Feat.
Really?
Yep, they had a duo thing going, and we did a bunch of gigs that summer.
Well, then it only makes sense that you would cite them as the band that sort of pushed you along a little bit there. All right. I'm trying to remember when we talked to them. I think they were coming to DAR Constitution Hall. It was during the pandemic. But I gotta check really. Oh, it was Bill Payne, the founding keyboardist,
Hmm.
is the one that joined us. Look that up in our archives, folks. They might even mention Orleans. I can't remember, but hey, maybe they were inspired by you too along the way. You never know. Hey, this has been so much fun chatting with you. Is there anything else you want to say to invite the listeners out to Annapolis? I mean, it's June 28th. I guess we're coming up on. It'll be right before 4th of July. Everyone could come out to Annapolis. You're on the Chesapeake. Pick some crabs, whatever you got to do. But yeah, anything you want to say to invite them out to see the band?
Yeah, as you say, it's an intimate venue, and we really enjoy playing those, as opposed to like being on a 2 or 3 act bill where you kind of gotta get on, get off, do your thing. It lets me tell a few stories like I've told to you, and connect all the dots as we go. So the show it's like a play, has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and uh, and it tells the story in snippets and in music. So that's how that goes. And people can find out all about us at orleansonline.net. And if they're still on the Facebook thing, it's Orleans Music is our Facebook page, which I rarely, rarely visit, to be honest. But the website itself is kind of like an Orleans museum library. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. And I love that what you just said, that you structure this whole set list almost like a theatrical experience, a beginning, middle, end, like different acts of a play. I like that. It should be an experience. It shouldn't just be random songs. I love the care that you take to the approach. Lance Hoppin, thank you so much for joining us. Again, folks, you gotta come out. Lance is the last remaining touring with the band of that sort of original 72 lineup there. So you have to come out. It's Orleans at Ram's Head, Annapolis on Saturday, June 28th. Don't miss it. Hey, thanks so much for doing this.
You're welcome, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.